So, good evening and good morning, everyone, from wherever you're joining us. This is the Himalayan Institute of Cultural and Heritage Studies weekly session, the contained, now uncontained series of COVID session happening with our very own Ekta Singh, to be doctor very soon. It's just a formality. And to introduce Ekta, Ekta Singh has recently completed her PhD in Himalayan archaeology, specializing in Spiti from the HNB Garhwal University, Uttarakhand. Her research focused on tracing human occupation in Spiti Valley before the arrival of Buddhism in the region. She has participated in various archaeological projects, conferences in India, Nepal, Indonesia, Malaysia, amongst others. Her research interests in the Himalayas include focus on archaeological, anthropological, and ethnographical contexts. She loves to travel and explore new cultures, exotic cuisine, and she has this appreciation for poetry as well. And today she will take us to Spiti. And Spiti, has been in the news, Lahore and Spiti, because of the opening of the Atal Tunnel. And of course, it has been in the news for a bad reason as well, where this whole village was found to be COVID positive. So development has its own ways of reaching to these far remote areas and creating havoc at times. And Ekta has been there and done that, and she has lived the experience of understanding the people of Spiti through her research. And Spiti, not many people know about the history and the narratives because it's still being, worked on. And we are so happy that she's here today to share her firsthand experience in her research work in the beautiful land of snow of Spiti. So, Ekta, please take us to the wonderful landscape of Spiti and its people and enlighten us about the archaeology of Spiti. And
Thank you, Sonali.
and before I give you the mic, I would urge everyone to please put their mics off and to put their videos off so we can provide more bandwidth to Ekta as she speaks today. Yes, Ekta.
Okay, thank you, Sonali, for this opportunity. And I think I share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay. So today I'm going to talk about archaeology of Spiti Valley from earliest time to 9th century CE, which was my PhD research work. And I just- yes. So in this picture, you can see a view of Spiti Valley from a cave that we have hiked one day for to see a pictograph site over there. And when we talk about Spiti, so the first thing that pops up into our mind are its beautiful monastery. One is Tabo Monastery, which was established in 10th century CE, and which is also considered as one of the earliest uh, monastery in the Trans-Himalayan region, followed by Key Monastery, which was established in 11th century CE and also one of the most photogenic area. Then Spiti is bounded by Ladakh in the north, in the east by Tibet, in the west by Lahore, in southeast by Kinnaur, in southwest by Kullu, and it is connected through Parangla Pass to Ladakh at the height of 5,580 meters, and to Lahore via Kunjum Pass, which is at the height of 4,590 meters. So the Himalayan zone is generally seen as a barrier during prehistoric times due to its topographic and extreme climatic conditions. Spiti Valley is situated in the Trans-Himalayan terrain of India, from where many archaeological evidences were recently discovered. The presence of archaeological remains like stone tools, ceramics, burials, and rock art in the area has allowed us to understand the history of the pre-Buddhist era of this region. This is the attempt to present an outline of of the city's early history and can be considered as the beginning of a process which will result in understanding of the area, and new evidences and result of the scientific analysis gave us more reliable conclusion. Uh, for the research work, uh, for field work, pre-field work, published literature, both secondary and primary, were taken into consideration. And the field work was conducted between 2015 to 2019. Only May to October are suitable for the exploration due to inclement weather of the region. For the research work, a detailed survey was conducted to explore the archaeological evidences in the study area, and the result of exploration were used to understand the landscape and nature of the material through ages. To understand more about Trans-Himalayan archaeology during this time, I have also assisted two archaeological projects, one in Mustang, Nepal, and other in Ladakh, Toskar area. All the material were collected and were cleaned in the lab, documented, analyzed, and photographed. The lithic assemblage from the study area was analyzed and compared archaeologically with the lithic tools found in the another Trans-Himalayan region. The funerary remains include skeleton remains, pottery remains, ornaments, implements, and human skeleton remains from the burials were taken to Anthropological Department, Punjab University, for identification of the sex, age, and gender of the human remains. And further, for AMS dating, they were taken. The samples were sent to BSIT and uh, PRL. Then coming to our first theme, that is the lithic tool site. Only one site has yielded the lithic tools in the area, that is Damathang, which is in the border of Kinnaur and CP region. This is the view of the site. From here, the most of the artifacts have been found. Uh, as you can see through the satellite view, this is the investigation area, which is at the confluence of Spiti River and Gyu Nala. Gyu village is also famous for its Gyu mummy. And so we have discovered these uh, artifacts from this region. The artifacts were scattered all around in this area, but only one, so only this much portion has yielded the artifacts and not beyond this. And as we go from from south to the northern direction, the concentration of these artifacts decreases. So only this 180 meter of the area has the artifacts, not beyond this. Like I've surveyed this area, all this area, but no such remains have been found. Only this area has yielded this uh, artifact. And this area, like from the road, we have divided into three terraces, and only the second terrace has yielded these artifacts. And these these artifacts were about 1 to 7 centimeters. And um, the lithic industry at Zamathang has non-geometric microliths. We have one unifacial chopper and conical and cylindrical cores, the scrapers, points, microblades, blades, and a few artifacts in shell. Rest of the 90% of the artifacts are in quartzite, only one in slate and few in shale. And the presence of good percentage of debitage and broken artifacts, along with large number of microliths, and their core suggests that this site was the factory site. They provide evidence of Upper Paleolithic and Microlithic tools made with Levolva and pressure plating technique. It indicates the transition phase and a simultaneous use of both the type of techniques at the site. Along with that, like as I've in the map, sorry, I haven't mentioned that. There are three boulders with rock art on them, and these A, B, C are the area from where they are the grid. I've done the grid collection. And so this is one of the boulder. The other two boulders are like highly patinated. So only photograph of this was possible. So, and along with that, there were potsherds were also found in this particular terrace, and burial remains have also been were discovered from the site in the past, which suggests that the site has been habitat for different time periods. But I also should mention here that this is a highly disturbed site, and as you can see, the artifacts were used by the locals for their own adventures, and they have, disturbed the site a lot. And but we can't say that this is an isolated site in the Trans-Himalayan region. The artifacts were also found from the Tibetan area, and uh, Arjunkola is in Nepal area. So due to the challenging terrain and lack of excavated site in the Trans-Himalayan region, it is not possible to confirm which route they had traveled. However, with the discovery of Zamathang in Spiti Valley, it can be assumed that the site might have been used as a halt to travel uh, either from North Tibet to the south or vice versa. This site can be considered as the northernmost upper Paleolithic and Mesolithic site in India, and further surveys could be targeted to recover the primary context of the site from excavations and with proper stratigraphic coherence, and the possibility of securing absolute dates to address the question of perspective of early migration in the Spiti Valley, and moreover, what was the role of Spiti Valley in the area, and I think it has also worked as a gateway for the intercourse between the Himalayas and Tibetan in the Upper Paleolithic region. Based on the typological similarity among the stone tools of the Zamathang and other sites in Tibet and Nepal, the relative dating of the site was believed to be early Holocene, which coincides with the geological time frame as well. With the present state of knowledge, it can be concluded that the Zamathang lithic assemblage might be dated between 25,000 years to 15,000 from the present time. Coming to the next theme, which is the burials in the Spiti Valley. So as you can see in the map, the burials were reported from all over the valley, from right from Losar, the first village of the valley, to the last village, that is Q. And they were scattered all around. And there were around 20 to 23 villages which have yielded human remains in the past. And along with iron and copper objects, bronze vessels, and gold objects, wood and beads, and but particularly, I'm going to talk about 4 or 5 villages from where human remains has been found and which were subjected to AMS dating as well. So the first village which I'm going to talk about is Tashigang, which is one of the highest village in the area. And as you can see, the site is highly disturbed. It was discovered during the road construction in the area, and these 7 pieces intact pottery remains have been found along with these 2 human remains. The body was like they were highly jumbled because of this distribution, destruction of the site. And while identifying these bones, it was found that they were juvenile, and the AMS dating uh, dates back them to 6th to 7th century CE. Another village is Kibber, from where during the terrace cutting for orchard, um, this skeleton has been found along with the intact pottery, and copper and iron implements were also found. And this is also a juvenile bone, like 10 to 11 uh, years old. And the AMS dating goes back to 7th to 8th century CE. Then the other village is Sanglung, from where a male uh, human remain has been found, which was 20 to 25 years old. And the AMS date goes back to 5th century CE. And over here also you can see 2 intact pottery remains have been found. Then Langza, which is also known as the fossil village in the valley, has produced the earliest AMS date. Uh, and as you can see, during the road construction, this site came into light. And there were 2, 3, we believe that there were 2, 3 cyst spirals from there. And from where wood piece has also been recovered. And this particular bone have been recovered from this area, which has given us the earliest date, that is 500 BCE. Manigongma is one of the village which has uh, uh, yielded these 4 intact pottery pieces. which one of them is a copper vessel, along with the wooden piece. And though no human remain has been recovered, because as it is not considered very auspicious to find a human bone remains, so the villagers have thrown it away. But we interestingly we found this pot with a copper patch on it, and which somehow shows the technical and craftsmanship skill of that time. Along with that, from Jew village, we have found 9 beads from a disturbed burial site. During a construction, it was found, and these marine shell, which is not locally available, but is found to inhabit specific areas, namely from the coral reefs of Gulf of Kutch, Mannar, and Parsley from East Coast. They suggest one of the ancient complex trade networks through which these shells used to be circulated in the region. I should mention here that in Kinnaur, in the sixth burial, steatite beads and these kind of beads were also found, like shell beads were also found from the region. So the widespread distribution of the burial site in the Trans-Himalayan region makes it one of the largest geographical regions with ancient burials in one of the world's highest mountain ranges. The findings of the important archaeological evidences of this burial with human remains and a large number of typical pottery types, beads from the different archaeological sites are indicative of the fact that Spiti Valley must have been inhabited by sedentary, transhuman communities in the past, for whom the disposable of the dead was socially and culturally not only fundamental but obligatory. And these findings of Swiss burials from Spiti are also considered significant because similar burial remains have been found in the entire Trans-Himalayan region, not just in Himachal Pradesh, but in Uttarakhand, Nepal, Tibet, and even in northwest Pakistan from the beginning of first millennium BC to historical period. And I should mention that the intact pottery pieces have only recovered from the burials. Rest from all of the area, the potsherds were recovered, but no intact pottery. And so this this is and sorry. And the scientific dates for burials given in the study are the first archaeological dates from Spiti Valley. The AMS dates range from 500 BCE to 700 CE, which indicates the continuation of burial culture for more than 1200 years. The date coincides with the dates recovered from the burials found in other parts of the Trans-Himalayan region. And it also coincides with Zhangzhung period, which was dated from 1200 BCE to 600 CE, and which was a separate political entity. And it came to an end in the mid-century century CE, when it was incorporated into the Tibetan Empire. And Spiti and Kinnaur was also a part of that Zhangzhung Empire. Then coming to the third theme, that is the rock art in the valley. So as you can see, I've divided it into 3 zones. Zone A has 3 sites: Kunjum, Taxte, and Mundasa Fort. So although unfortunately we haven't discovered the boulder in Kunjumla, which was reported by Franke, and so we haven't found that during our survey. But excuse me, in Taxte, there are 2 boulders with petroglyphs on it, and in Mondasa Folk, there is this cave which has white and red pictographs. Then section B this is a concentration of pictograph sites. Only pictograph sites have been found in this area. That is Chimokhadang, Nimaloksha, Tosadak, Chakpok, and all. And in the section C, this is the highly concentration of petroglyphs. So around 2,000 boulders with approx 20,000 petroglyphs have been found in this area, which is this section C, and only 2 pictograph sites. One is Tumdofug and another one is Larifug has been found in this area. So the in Spiti Valley, 3 kind of rock art is there, like petroglyphs, pictographs, and cup marks, are also known as cupules. Coming to the and yes, I must mention here that cup marks has also been recovered from only this area. This is the concentration of cup marks in the area. When we talk about petroglyphs, so we can see like hunting scene, like where anthropomorph figure is carrying a bow and arrow and hunting sorry, a ibex in this scene. And uh, over here also you can see a bow and arrow. And usually the anthropomorphs are seen are depicted in stick figures. And then there is this image of a tiger and eagle as well, along with other anthropomorphic figures and zoomorphic figures. You can also see the shapes like the sun, moon, and other geometrical figures, and along with historical figures of like chotins or we say stupas. And then there are other figures like shamanic figures also found. Along with this, if you can see this um, double hump camel, which is also considered as bacterian camel, is also found in the area. When we talk about pictographs, so there are 7 to 8 sites. Uh, and the color which is used is usually this red and ochre color and dark maroon in some cases. And usually anthropomorph and zoomorphs and tree figures, sun, moon, and swastikas. All these are depicted, and and white figures are also found in the area. And so Kapul or the Kapmas. So there is this village near Tabo, that is Lari, which has the highest concentration of cup marks in the area, and there are around 250 cup marks have been found in this area. So 55% of of these petroglyphs are zoomorphic figures, and 32% are anthropomorphic figures, and 13% are others. When I say others, so it has this swastikas, geometrical figures, and sun, moon, tree, and all these kind of figures. And in Zoomorphs also, it is highly dominated by blue sheep. As in the environment also, we can see blue sheep. You can still find blue sheep in the area, and then followed by ibex and other animals. While in Ladakh, it is totally opposite. It is dominated by ibex in that area, followed by blue sheep and other animals. So in Spiti, most of the known petroglyphs are found to the southeast from Nagmarang to Shelkar Sumla Pass, providing a preliminary basis for a discussion of Spiti's early history. The presence of different motifs and styles can help identify the time frame of the rock art present in the valley. So I followed this panel created by Martin and Lorian uh, uh, to date my these petroglyphs. So, according to them, the earliest is considered as the handprints or the footprints. And in CP, 4 or 5 handprints are found, like this over here, followed with mascoids or face or masks that we say. And there are 2, 3 mascoid faces discovered in the area, which is considered into the Bronze Age, and followed with the animal figures and this humor anthropomorph figures with bow and arrow and combatic scenes and dancing scenes are depicted in them. Followed with Iron Age with stylistic animal figures. So in Spiti, in comparison to Ladakh, not much of stylistic animal figures were found, but there are few of them. Then there are historical figures like swastikas and then the chortins or stupas in various forms, and along with the Tibetan inscriptions, and these were found in the area. So to conclude uh, the study in a nutshell and to comprehend the past of the Spiti Valley with archaeological evidence, the presence of the presence uh, of archaeological remains of like lithic sites in the area pushes the antiquities to 25,000 years, while the scientific dates of human bone in the burial recovered gave us the absolute date of 500 BCE to 700 CE, and the presence of rock art in the area make a significant addition to the study to reveal more about the people of the past who have left their marking from first millennium BCE to historical times. Though there is a need to study these evidences more scientifically to acquire as much information as possible, because these are the only source to study the cultural and technological development in the past of the arid landscape of the Trans-Himalayan region. These cultural affinities indicate the connection of the Trans-Himalayan region into one cultural zone. The present study provides a new avenue to initiate a large-scale interdisciplinary study to understand the adaptive and subsistence behavior, settlement, migration, burial practices, and trade network of early societies of this vast region, which has not received adequate attention. And so these are the further readings on Spiti Valley. To know more about archaeological findings of the area, these readings can be referred. And for the references, these are a few of them. So thank you.
Thank you, Ekta, for that wonderful presentation enlightening us about the Spiti Valley. And if you could stop sharing the screen. Yeah. So a couple of hands have been raised. And before I take on the first question, wait. Yeah, it hasn't. Yeah. Okay, so before I take on the first question, I wanted to ask you. So, when you were looking at the petroglyphs and the all of that, I know that two individuals, when I went to Spiti, they have documented the petroglyphs at the site, but they're not trained archaeologists, I believe. Have you? But they have done commendable work in terms of documenting it. Have you? I'm forgetting the name.
Is it Michael and Norbu?
Yeah, I think because one
Yes,
is a
yes, yes. Yeah. Like I've, gone. All of the sites were discovered. Maximum of the sites were discovered by them only, and so they were my main resource person who have guided me to all these sites and helped me in documenting all these sites. So
Okay.
yeah, they have done a tremendous job while documenting these areas.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that just goes on to say that you may not be trained as an archaeologist, but people who trek to these places, who go on bikes, and if you see sites like this, it's very important that even if you take
Yes.
photographs, you document it and give it to the right people, so that that narrative can be woven properly. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so Ekta, I know that in the Trans-Himalayan region, petroglyphs have been documented well. Right? You start from even in the area of Pakistan. So,
Yes.
is there any database that is a comparanda where you can kind of compare all of these properly? Like, is there something which is standardized across the Trans-Himalayan region in terms of petroglyphs? Because there's so many. There's a chain of petroglyphs in these regions. So, is there any standardized database which allows you to compare, like researchers to compare all of this? Because I think it's a splendid chance to do that across
Uh,
regions.
mhm.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there is one standard data, but like as these petroglyphs have been scattered around all over the Central Asia and in Tibet and in Ladakh and further northwest of Pakistan. So, but one can follow the readings of Beleza, who has done a tremendous job in this Tibet plateau, and then Lorian has done a good job in Ladakh area. So even I like to do a relative dating. Even I have referred these works and try to give a relative dating to the area. So I think we can refer these works. They have done a really good work in the aspect of petroglyphs.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
my second question is the disarticulated bones that you found of the
Hmm.
juveniles. You found these vessels, and I noticed that most of them seem to be handmade vessels through the
Yes,
coil
they are
mill.
maximum of them are handmade and cord marked,
Yeah.
and they have this thumb impression beneath them. At the base, they have this thumb impression as well.
So it's like a potter's mark or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. That's what. Yeah.
So, have they found anything that kind of further tells us about their conception of life after death?
I think the pottery remains. Which like the intact pottery that we have found, they were all found in the burials, inside the burials,
Hmm.
and they don't have much of utilitarian purpose. Instead, they serve as a ritualistic purpose, and that kind of life after death kind of concept.
Mm-hmm.
So this we can assume these kind of things through these potteries, because only intact pottery has been found from them, and all over in Spiti Valley, potsherds have been scattered in every village. You can like when you roam around and do surveys in the fields, then you can recover these kind of potsherds, and all of them have has this, like, they are red wear and cord marks. Even the potsherds, you can see these cord marks. So we can say that maybe earlier they were also part of some intact pottery, but with time they were all broken and found into pieces. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And let me take the first question. We have Dr. Parth Chauhan. Parth, over to you.
Thank you, Sonali. Um, Ekta, that was a very nice presentation. Thank you for summarizing everything. So I had two questions.
Yeah.
One is there a scope for finding older prehistoric material? That's one question. And the second question is, in terms of the petroglyphs and the pictograms, like, do you think there's any spatial or geographic patterning in terms of specific uh, subject matters found in specific areas, or specific boulders, and having specific type of figures and not other areas? So is there any kind of patterns that you see?
Okay, so first, answering your first question, that is scope of finding prehistoric sites. Well, I've tried to find further sites in the area, but right now I was unable to do. But I think yes, the area has a lot of potential, but due to the terrain, it's really difficult to find. But I think with good teamwork, we can definitely find few more sites in the area, which will lead us to some better conclusion of the area. And then coming up to your second question about the petroglyphs. So as such pattern, I'm not much sure, but as you can see, I have divided three zones on the basis of that pattern, on the spatial, on the basis of that spatial landscape kind of thing. So that's why I've divided into. But further, yes, there are constant. There are few regions which have primarily like concentrated area, but I'm not very much sure about the petroglyphs were, because they have chosen. I don't know. It's very difficult to answer like this.
Maybe
Yeah.
you can apply something like GIS and see if there's any patterning.
Yeah. Yeah. In future, yes, of course, we can do that. Yeah.
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 Thank you.
Yes, I think that's a great suggestion, Parth. Just getting all the tools required to see density of and
Hmm.
just see, like, through predictive analysis, just see uh, where all these are panning out. It'll be really
Yeah, and I
interesting.
would
Yeah.
just
The
like to
major
add also,
concentration.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I would just
Sorry.
like to compliment Ekta on the amazing work she has done for her PhD. It's really, really good.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
like
Thank you so much.
opened up the Spiti Valley to really, like, this is
Yeah,
really good.
it deserves attention.
Yes.
Thank you.
So let's take the next
And
question. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Ekta.
yeah, as we you were telling about the concentration of the area, na, so there is this village Lari, which has the highest concentration of both the petroglyphs as well as the cup marks, and we cannot see that kind of concentration in any part of the area. So yeah, and plus yeah, petroglyphs are majorly like in concentration in this zone in the southeast of the valley.
And this is very interesting, that why. And then even comparing where other sites in the Trans-Himalayan region where cup marks have been found in greater numbers, like, what are the
Hmm.
similarities between such places and why this is happening? So
Yeah.
Yeah. Further, we can study these kind of things. Yeah, with the help of,
Do
yes,
you
of
think
course,
the
GIS.
do you think the density of rock art is related to proximity to habitation sites?
I guess so, because yes, right now, like in the today's scenario, all the concentration of these petroglyphs are at the similar places where today villages are located. So, and plus, like I was even, looking for the origin, or maybe like from where these have the makers of these petroglyphs have arrived. So I was working on a theory that maybe maybe they are coming from Ladakh area or from Tibet area. So which were the routes that they were following? Because we cannot see any petroglyph site in Kinnaur area, though there were two sites like Sumra and Shalkar, but which is like culturally it's like Spiti, part of Spiti only because of today's district division, it has come into Kinnaur region. Otherwise, it has to be in that area only. And only one pictograph site has been found in Kinnaur, which is Rogi. So nothing is beyond that in the region. So it is a hypothesis kind of thing that this is coming from the northern region, maybe Ladakh or Tibet area. Yeah.
Okay. So let's take the next question. Dr. Manan has his next question. Manan, over to you.
Hi, Ekta. That was a wonderful presentation and really amazing work.
Thank you.
The question I have is more of a speculative question. So based on the data you've collected and what you've observed, like clusters of pictographs and petroglyphs along with intact pottery, so were these settlements very well established settlements, and was it a thriving and an active trade route, or were these just nomadic temporary settlements or establishments?
Uh, for this question of settlement, because we haven't found any structure kind of thing except the cyst burial, we are not sure about the settlement area in the Spiti Valley. But first of all, I think I am keeping burials and rock art in a separate thing, because we are not sure whether these are the same people who are doing this cyst burials along with making the petroglyphs. And because the petroglyphs are are divided into different time frames. And when it comes to the settlement of these people in the makers of this petroglyph, so we might say they are temporary in some aspect. Like we can see many motifs which are very much influenced from Central Asian art. So maybe people from Central Asia have come to this place and so, but we are not very much sure, because I think more research needs to be done in the area to get more evidences, and then we can come to a better conclusion whether what about, like, to answer this question about the settlement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Manan. Now over to the next question. Angela, over to you. Yeah, I think we just
Okay,
lost.
sorry, I was trying
okay.
to unmute.
Okay, sorry. You're done.
Sorry about that. Hi,
Yeah.
Ekta.
Angela, are you around? We just lost her, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Can you hear me as well? Okay, sorry about
Yes,
that.
yes.
Sorry, Ekta, thank you for the wonderful presentation. That was very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now my question to you is, how are they dating the petroglyphs? Are they basing it based on associated sites, or they actually able to scientifically date pigments of pictographs, or in what method are they using to date the petroglyphs?
Okay. So for dating, I have just used the relative dating, which is I followed the pattern used in Ladakh and Tibet area. And so no scientific date has been done, or scientific analysis has been done for the petroglyphs and pictographs. So only the relative dating has been done in the area. right now. Maybe in further we can think about taking the pigments of these pictographs and then further do the scientific analysis.
Okay, so what are they using for the relative dating in terms of, are they always associated with the site, or that you can date using carbon dating, or is it, or other stylistic things?
It's basically on stylistic and thematic motive, like style and motive.
Okay, thank you.
So that tells us that so much more, research and analysis can really kind of open up more information about these sites, right? Okay. So thanks, Angela. We have Sonam Yangzom with his question or her question. Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes, Sonam, you are.
Okay, so I think SB Ota sir, he can go before me because he has been waiting for too long. I'll go after him.
Okay, his hand wasn't raised, so I have the questions as they come to me. But
Yeah.
Dr. Ota, please, over to you, and then we'll take.
Yeah, I have got a number of questions.
Yes, sir.
Talking about the lithics, that
Yes,
one site which you have got. Can you please
Yes.
tell me at what altitude that occurs?
So it's on 3,000 meters. 3,000.
3,000 meters.
Yes, sir.
Does it come? There is a pass which connects Ladakh. Whether
Yes,
that site
yes.
is located along the pass?
No, not at all. Not at all. This site
That's
is
not.
particularly located in the south of the Spiti Valley, and that Parangla Pass, which connects to the Ladakh, is in the north, further north.
But that site
very
is
far, actually.
because there must have been number of passes, because Spiti
Yes,
Valley
of
is
course.
such the number of passes. This
Yes,
site
yes.
is located in any of the passes.
Yes, it's near to the Korik Pass, which connects it to the Tibet. It's very near to that pass, actually.
Okay.
It's in the borderland.
That's
Yeah,
what
that's why. It's very difficult
And
to.
there is a pass
study.
that connects Tibet.
Yes, Korik Pass.
Okay.
Korik
Because
Pass.
why I'm saying that is,
Yeah.
so because almost all these lithic sites and petroglyphs mostly you will find on the passes.
Yes,
That's okay.
yes, you're right.
And
you're right.
I feel I feel these might not belong to 25,000 anyway. Can be dated
That's
because we
speculation
have
right
got
now.
yeah, we have got such sites in Ladakh,
Yes.
very close to Karakoram,
Yeah.
now dated. It's published already about
Yes.
9,000 BC early Holocene.
Yes.
But
Yes, sir.
this very interesting cannot exist only one side. There will be many more. If you explore the
definitely.
passes,
Yes, sir.
you will be
Yes,
getting.
sir.
You will be getting number of
Yes,
sites.
sir. Yes, sir.
And
Definitely, sir.
yeah, coming to these rock cut sites, I have got a serious reservation what Lauren has done, or all the people those are working on petroglyphs.
Yes.
Because
Uh-huh.
one thing people are forgetting, no one is trying to study the degree of patination on that. You must be knowing the desert varnish,
Yes, sir.
it's very fast, gets weathered and the color changes. Now
You're
all
right,
these
you're right.
petroglyphs are etched, scratched.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yes.
in microns, half a millimeter, 1/4 of a millimeter, or up to a millimeter.
Yes.
Now
yes,
question
yes.
comes, if today I'm scratching a rock which has got 1.5 mm thickness of the weathered surface, and
Yes.
my scratching is half a millimeter, it will look old. Now what one should do, which I was doing, I've done that for Ladakh, degree of patination needs to be ascertained. Whenever we are recording, one, the amount of patination that exists on the rock on which petroglyphs are depicted, and what is exactly the depth of the petroglyphs there.
Yes,
Whether
you're right. I agree
that
with you. Yes.
scratching is within the patination and going beyond the patination. Because if you take the patination color and match it with the stone color chart, Munsell color chart, you will can easily differentiate some sort of a very, of course, very crude relative chronology.
Yes,
And
I agree with you. And
that's
I
a,
think this we can
till
do this.
that-
Yeah, we can extend this
Yeah.
research into this areas and
Yes,
further
that's
study,
very
do it
interesting.
more
Yeah.
scientifically. Yes, and
Because
create
when
our
the
own
Lauren
standard
was
chart.
doing,
Yes, yes.
when Lauren was doing, they have not been trained in archaeology. When I talked to them about the patination, degree of patination, how this fast desert burnish takes place, that and
Yeah,
they
because yeah, of course, it's an arid
of
region.
the this thing, only on the depiction we cannot have a patination. Anyway, and another thing I'm telling, so when you plot all these rock art sites, do they fall on the passes again? Forget about the rivers, nalas, because the landscape is such, just your sites in relation to passes. Why I'm saying, because that area has got the transhumans activities in the past. People are going with because most of the depictions are domesticated animals, which is not the case in Ladakh. Okay, they are the ibex and all these things. But whether do they follow those passes through which people move, ancient passes, or it's a small, the landscape, you see the alluvial fans, in the summer season, water comes and a small patch of land, grazing grasses grow and all that, where the pasture land creates. So you will have to see in relation to that, you will get a good pattern.
Yes,
if you plot
you're
all
right.
those, instead of just
because
Just a suggestion.
all this
Okay.
sites,
Now, and I was talking about these burials, human burials. Do they occur at what altitude? What altitude they occur?
So they
Burials?
they occur in various altitude. Like most of them at a high altitude of 4,500 meters to like around 3,000 meters. Like we are found in various places, but most of them are at 4,000 meters.
Go for DNA.
Yeah, we are
Go for
thinking
DNA
about that.
Yeah.
We are talking to Neeraj Rai sir for
And
that.
I'm telling you, the most promising would be the track, the La. You call it a La, no? Passes. Ancient
the passes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which connects Tibet. You explore that. You are bound to get one prehistoric site is there, and you are bound to get, and very early remains you will get. Only thing, your eyes have to be trained. The way Ladakh thing, nothing is visible. Sometime back when I was talking to the people never believed me. How come this landscape will have such beautiful sites?
Yeah.
So
it's very
that
difficult
area,
at that
you'll be fine.
with this present climatic condition. It's very difficult to find these sites. But yes, you are right. There's a lot of potential in that area, especially in the passes.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Excellent. Yeah.
Thank you for the suggestion, sir.
Thank you, sir, for guiding. And also with the pottery, you found those whole pots. Maybe residue analysis could tell you so much also.
But unfortunately, we have kept I've kept 2 pots along with the residue. But I went for a conference and somebody opened up the box and things happened and I've lost all the data from
that's
so
very sad. And
that's
also
really
the mandible,
sad, actually.
mandible of the skeletons, like the teeth.
Yeah, they're there, and we are doing analysis on that. They're still under as Ota sir has suggested, we are doing the DNA analysis, so we have already given the samples for that.
And not only DNA, like even
Sonali,
the
you are right.
Yeah. Yes, sir, go on.
Because that environment is such, nothing gets destroyed. I'm telling you, you can go for the residue analysis, everything. Because when I was excavating in Ladakh, everything remains intact because there is no leaching of the things. You know, there are no rains. So that's a good thing. Residue analysis or any sort of thing. Even you can go for the DNA from the sediments, if possible.
And even for the teeth, you know, the wear and tear of the teeth, you kind of will come to know what were they kind of eating.
The dietary habits of these people. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we can do that further.
Yeah, and even if you did you find any strand of hair, anything like that?
Oh, as far as I remember, no, not the hair.
Yeah, but maybe like Dr. Ota said that you really have to have those piercing eyes just to see, because you know
Yes,
with the
yeah.
Amra, if you remember, Amra had given a lecture and he looks at the hair strands and tries to see the strontium on it to see the water, you know, and what was their life like geographically, like were they wanderers or were they sedentary and things like that. So really, like bits and pieces of this evidence we can put together, and there's so much to do. And
and then our whole story can be made. Yes, you're right. But as far as I have noticed, hair were not being recovered from that, these skeletons.
Because the level of preservation at such high altitude should be really good.
Very good. Yeah. Plus they are contained in this burials with, you know, all the stones around them.
And any clothes, any markers of any like
no, not from these bones.
These are disturbed sites, is it? They were disturbed
because of the recent construction. They are disturbed because of the recent construction going on in the area, the road cuttings, the terrace cuttings. Because of that only we have discovered these sites. Otherwise, it's very difficult to find these sites in the area because they are such a slopey. Like few of the sites are in such a slopey area. Couple of them in a flat area, but maximum our sites are in the slopey areas. So it's not easy to find them. Yeah,
because I know there's
discoveries.
Mr. Gopal here who's from Kinnor, and I think in one of the lectures a few weeks ago he was talking about somebody finding pots and burial, and nobody did anything about it, and that information is lost. So there are, like Dr. Ota said, there's so many places waiting to be found, and indiscriminate, like we really need professionals, archaeologists who kind of go to these places, and people don't dig, and you know, we'll lose a part of history. Having said that, let's take the next question. iPhone guest is our person who will be asking the question. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Radha. I'm sorry it didn't come up on the screen, my name. So, so I traveled to Spiti and was totally enamored by it. And hence one of the reasons why I've also been part of this conversation. Just two questions for you, Ekta. Your presentation was really interesting, and I really, it took me through more than just the beauty of Spiti. It took me, into greater understanding of what happened before we actually traveled there. Two questions. One is, from these pictographs, were you able to identify what was the religion that these people followed? Because that would also give us where they came from, So was there any sort of thing that you could say from them that the religion that they followed?
Yes, for the religion, there are categories in these petroglyphs. So we can find the symbols of Bon religion, which was there prior to Buddhism in the area, and then there are symbols of Buddhist, religion as well. But we cannot say anything before that when in the context of religion, because they are usually figures of natural things like sun, moon. So we think that they might be, the nature worshipper kind of people, followed with Bon religion, which also follows this, natural, these things, sun, moon,
nature worship.
They also worship these, the same thing. Then we have stupa, figures like stupas and Tibetan inscription. So they say a lot about the, invasion of this Buddhist religion in the area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So you're saying Buddhism sort of took over the nature worshippers.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay,
Because they
okay,
come later
okay.
in the area.
I see. Okay. And another thing, Ekta, which I wanted to know was the material that was used for making the pottery and all that. What was there any sort of thing of what came first and what came after that, and in terms of shapes and sizes and that sort of thing? Hunting
Well,
tools.
yeah. When it comes to pottery, so there are only a few intact pottery has been found, ranging from like 5 to 8 centimeters to 33 centimeter of pots, and most of them
Okay.
are handmade. And like right now, once I went to Langza village, apparently there is this family who still makes this pot in the area, and they are the only family who makes. And now even they have stopped making. So I've discussed these, what are the material they use. So they told me that they uh, got this clay from very far regions, like beyond the mountains, and they collected this clay, and then they make this pot. But there is a difference between the pottery they are making right now and the one we have found in the burials. Because in the burials we have
Okay.
redware, handmade
Huh.
redware pottery, and but
Correct.
now what we see is the black clay kind of thing. Like if you have visited Langza, then you must have
Yeah.
noticed the soil of Langza is also very black in nature. Like
Correct.
the
Correct.
color
Yeah.
is black. So the pots
Yeah.
in the valley, which they still use, they are much larger in size, as well as they are the color of these pots are very different from the one which we have found in the burial.
Okay.
Plus
Okay.
the pattern is also different. The one in the burials are cord marked, and they have, in few of them, has incised lines as well. And the rim of those spots are different, and they are quite similar to the other other ceramics that were found in other burials, which were found in Trans-Himalayan region, in Nepal and Tibet, as well as in Kinnaur and Uttarakhand.
Okay.
Ekta, we could
Your
all
presentation
actually.
was lovely, Ekta. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
So Ekta, the thin
Yes, Himali.
sections, maybe one could analyze the thin sections of these potsherds and see.
We can do that. Like I've done a very preliminary ceramic analysis, and recently got the paper published on that. But that's a very preliminary thing that I've done. But we can take it to the another level and do some more scientific research on the ceramics along with the potsherd. Not just the intact pottery, but with potsherd, because there is a huge collection of potsherds from the area.
Yeah, I think just finding the sourcing of the raw material and all of that, a lot can be kind of
Yes.
revealed. So
Yeah.
yeah.
True.
Okay, so let's take the
Thank you.
next question. I'll take Gopesh Jha and then I'll take Sonam after that. Okay.
Thanks, Dr. Gupta, for giving this opportunity. I would like to, first of all, hats off to Ekta for this remarkable work. I know the amount of challenges and the eyes have been traveling to understand the morphology of the landscape. And within that, you peep into the quaternary archives. I have one question regarding the lithics and the prehistoric occupation over there. You told about they are artifacts based on quartzite, is it?
Yes. Maximum of them are in quartzite.
Yeah, last year I remember I'm very much fond of that whole area itself. I went for a Pin Valley for a trekking, where I happened to notice there are lots of quartzite formation, which is I think the only source in that area which falls in the Pin Valley, which is Moth. Do you think that if there's a relation between there's material traveling from far distance and coming into Spiti Valley? Because if you see, there's more of a shell rather than quartzite, and it's a limited source of raw material. So what do you think about the site catchment in your area? Are the people taking this material from far distances, or there were multiple groups which are traveling within this area? And the second question, as Dr. Ota said, and also Dr. Chauhan said, the preservation conditions are remarkable. did you also see any kind of natural rock shelters which might be very good candidate for any kind of trial excavation to understand whether they contain any kind of quaternary archive or not?
Thank you, Gopesh. For the source of material, yes, you are right. There is a possibility that the material was, they were picking those material from the far regions and traveling back to this place and then making them. But we can also find quartzite in the veins of the boulders. Like from the site itself, we have big boulders in which quartzite veins are there. So there is a possibility that they are making these, these artifacts from the, extracting that material from those veins and then making artifacts from it.
Yeah.
And what was your second question? Sorry.
Yeah, like any rock shelters, like even the natural ones, which sometimes you might not find any kind of archaeological evidences, but it's kind of accidental because sometimes the archive is not eroded, so you don't see it on the surface, but they might have some kind of quaternary archive.
Yes, there is a possibility. Like in the upper Spiti Valley, there are a lot of rock shelters from where we have discovered these pictograph sites. And though I have looked around to see any lithic artifacts, though unfortunately I haven't. But maybe in future we can again go to these places and again look for them, and there is a possibility, I might say, like there's a potential for more archaeological sites to be found in these areas, in that vicinity of these rock shelters, because there are ample of them, especially in the upper Spiti Valley.
Thank you, Ekta, for this very insightful presentation. Thank you for the answers.
Ekta, before I take the next question, could you just give some information on, these particular petroglyphs that are carved on the rocks? What is so special about the boulders they're carved on, and how are they different from the ones that are not, you don't find petroglyphs? If you could I know they're like kind of shiny, and a lot of people who've traveled to Spiti and Ladakh have kind of noticed that. But for those who are oblivious of the nature of the raw material where they're carved, like what is so special about, if you could just talk about it so that everybody can get that information.
Yes, like initially when I started documenting them, it was really difficult for me to locate these boulders, and I have to go to all the boulders and check where there is a mark on it or not. But with time, I don't know, it comes naturally or what, you realize a kind of pattern among the boulders. So the boulders that they were choosing were comparatively, yes, they were shiny, they were round, and they have this, what you can say, a slope, sometimes slopey, sometimes flat surface. Both kind of surface were used to make the. But you will be surprised that sometimes they are made in such a difficult phase of this boulder that you will be like, how and why they are making in this surface. So every time you'll get a surprise as well. But most of them, the boulders look very similar to each other, in which you find these kind of petroglyphs. They are usually round and flat, usually, but surprises are always there.
And any directionality, like are they in a particular direction, facing the sun, away from the sun, or did you see any patterns in that?
Yes, actually, I was discussing this with Michael once, like long back, that sun position matters. Like and with that, I'm not sure about the orientation of the petroglyphs according to that, but I think sunlight matters to them when they were drawing it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much. The next question, Sonam, over to you.
First of all, thank you so much for this talk. And yeah, so I'm a novice when it comes to archaeology. So I just had a very general question. So you talked about your research in Mustang, Nepal, right? So
Yes.
I was just curious if you found or if you concluded with any similarities between these two cultures, Spiti and Mustang, from the objects that you found from these two regions. Yeah.
Yes, there are actually many similarities as well as differences in these two areas. Like the both are in Trans-Himalayan region, but the kind of burials we are we are locating in these areas are quite different. In Mustang, most of the sites are in caves. They are cave burials, while in Spiti we have just burials. So there is a possibility because of the geographical terrain they are choosing these kind of areas or this kind of structure of the burials rather I would say, and plus the time period of Mustang goes back really far, like it's around 3000 BCE, which I remember. So yes, the data very are pushed back in that area. While in CP, it's from 500 BCE to the historic period. And the pottery is also very different in these two regions. The style is quite different. The pottery of this, yeah. And but there are wooden pieces in both the structures. We found wood. Although in Mustang, it's very interesting to see that the burials are, the skeletons are found in the wooden shells. Like they have made like as you see the dome bed, like one above the another and the another. So in Mustang, you can see these kind of burials in the caves inside, like inside the cave, there are shells in which the skeletons are found. So there is a lot of difference in the structure of the burials in both of these regions.
Okay, thank you so much.
So next question is from Gopalji, who's from Kinnaur. Have we lost him? I think we have. So
can you hear me?
Oh, now we can.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I think most of my questions are already answered. I have 3 more questions with me. Question number 1 is, once I was traveling to Pin Valley. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Once I was traveling to Pin Valley, while going to Pin, on the left side of the river, on a rock, a very faint image of Guru Padmasambhava is seen. So
yes.
have you come across that?
I guess, yes. I remember it.
So,
Yes, on the
so
left
what,
side
what
of the bank. Yes.
yeah, so
Yeah.
what is your inference about that? Like what could
Actually, it's the Buddhist thing, and my research was focused more on the pre-Buddhist area. So
okay.
I have just took photographs of it and enjoyed it,
Right.
but not much of research has been
right.
done on that aspect. Yes.
I think Gopalji, that's
Okay,
like
so
a historical kind of, it brings it within the purview of historical archaeology. So everybody knows who Guru Padmasambhava was. And, all through these routes, which are trade routes and through which, Buddhism was being, practiced in these regions. So you have
right.
a lot of these Maitri Buddhas and Padmasambhavas, all larger than life images at times, and all through Afghanistan and all Swat Valley and all these areas you find depictions. So so it's a remnant of a trade route or their religious affiliations.
Right. So like this discovery was a very recent discovery, the Padmasambhava image which I'm talking about. Maybe around 8 or 9 years back, this was discovered by a Rinpoche who was traveling on that. And the other, since your study was around Kyorik Pass, so near to Kyorik there is Samdo, then near to Samdo there is Shelkar village. Right?
Which one?
Have you?
Shelkar.
Shelkar. Yeah. In Shelkar also,
Shelkar,
just above the road, there are some caves.
Yes, and yes.
So any like studies have you done on those caves and any inferences drawn
not
from
on
there?
those caves because not on those caves because as per I think they are more of historic and used by the Buddhist monks for meditation. Like we can like similar caves can be found in Tabo region. But I can
Okay.
mention here that we have found petroglyphs in that, like above those caves, we have found boulders with petroglyphs. And we can assume that
Okay.
there is this path going from Shalkar to Sumra, a trek path.
Okay.
And
Right.
in
Right.
Sumra also we have a field filled with petroglyphs. So, maybe in
Okay.
future
So
if we can do this
it
trek.
is near to the.
Sorry.
Mhm. Okay. So that will again is creating interest in me about the trek. And the third thing
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
like, while you doing this study, have you come across Mr. Chering Dorje? He is from Lahore, I think, and he has done a lot of historic studies about the Spiti.
Is he from ASI? Is he from ASI? Retired from ASI.
So I see. So you have come across him? Or
Yes, yes, yes. I was there with him in 2015. I've like worked with him back then, and he has guided me a lot in that region. Like it was my first
so
expedition to Spiti, and he was there. Yes.
okay. So that's a great thing because he has got a huge understanding about the culture and
Yes.
how people
Yeah.
migrated. Right. So thank you very much for your presentation. It's creating more interest for me in Spiti.
Yeah.
Thank you once again.
Welcome.
Thank you. And we'll take Suramya's question. Suramya, over to you. And then we'll take Kasang and then Grace.
Ekta.
Hi. Finally.
Finally, after a long time,
Yeah.
managed to get hold of you and ask few questions, I guess. Thanks, Sonali,
Okay.
for facilitating this interaction for all of us. I was just wondering, I remember during Janvit Sharma's talk, you had mentioned about destruction of some of the boulders in your field area. So which
Yeah.
clusters are they specifically from?
They are from the section C that I've mentioned, the southeast of Spiti Valley, where major concentration of petroglyphs are there. So, right, like when you cross from Larit and when you go towards Po, so over there, a lot of destruction has already happened.
Right. Could you also tell us about the direction of the rivers, like in which the cluster of these petroglyphs are found?
Most of them were found on the right bank of the Spiti River, like when it goes towards Khab or towards Kinnaur, when you say. So maximum are open air sites. The petroglyphs particularly are found on open air sites, and most of them are on right bank. But there are few sites, like 2 or 3 sites on the left bank as well. But they are like very rare. Huh? Most of the maximum sites are found on the right side of the bank.
Right. And are these aggregations, happening around possible river coverings during, say, extreme snow? Do you get my idea? Like in order to pass the river, for example,
Yeah.
like these clusters, are they near, say, possible bridges or an idea like that? Could that be inferred
Well,
for
because
some
I
reason?
haven't been there in winters, so
Yeah.
I'm not very sure, because in summers it's all running and it's really difficult to cross, because I remember I have to go to one site because earlier there was a bridge, and Michael has documented few cuff marks and few petroglyphs were there, but in but later that bridge has collapsed, and so I couldn't manage to go on that site in the past 5 years. And there was this small jhula pool kind of thing, in which you have to sit in a trolley and then you have to go there.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that much courage to go to that site because of that.
I'm sure.
So yeah,
Why I
there
asked
are
this?
sites like that as well.
Why I asked this, because I remember reading some of Lorien's conclusions.
Yes,
And
even
what
I
are the
I can
yeah,
remember this thing because in Ladakh it has happened, especially in I what's the name of that site for starting from B or something like that? Because in that site it has particularly happened. Like in winters, they can easily
yeah,
cross river and
yeah.
then they have. But I think it's not possible in city. I'm not sure because I've not been
Yeah,
there in
because they are
winters.
not
Maybe.
so close to the river, the sites in Spiti, not all of them. There are many which are quite,
Yeah,
yeah.
plus the elevation from the river is also very different. I mean, like the river is, very low, and these banks on which petroglyphs are found are on very a little high elevated.
Okay.
So there is a possibility on maybe in winter sometime we can check if it's
Right.
freezing and we can pass through those passes.
Maybe Ekta, if they open Lahore Spiti again, maybe we should go during winters. Yeah.
I'm not sure this year. I don't think that's possible. They have already closed it for the winters.
I'm joking.
Maybe next year and in coming years, yes, maybe
Yes.
might have this opportunity.
On last thought, I was just thinking, say for example, the Border Road Organization has a maximum reach out there, you know,
Hmm.
in terms of, say all the developmental activities. Is there any particular initiative, say from heritage enthusiasts like ourselves, which tries to say share the knowledge with them in order to say avoid future mishaps? So I think if that is not happening, that could be a great possibility in future, because they
Uh,
are the first one to encounter s- all these sites, future possible sites.
Actually, it's a very good idea to talk to these person as well. Though we had many rock art education meetings kind of thing with the villages,
Yeah.
and they many of them are now, at least now they are aware of them, and they themselves tell us ki, madam, go to that side, you'll definitely find something, and they ask question about these things, which is very interesting as well, and the kind of question they are putting up. But I think we should take this suggestion, and maybe we can talk to BRO people as well, because yes, you're right, they are the first one to linger around in these areas, but villages are quite aware of these things.
But also
Absolutely.
it's fading from the memory of the people. I remember going from one part to the other, near Dhankar, and I was following the trail of these petroglyphs as documented. And young children, they had no clue about it. And then the older ones, they knew of it, So it's fading too in the memory as they're getting destroyed.
Yeah, and interestingly, I remember one conversation with an ex-MLA of the area. He is located in Lari. And when I was there in 2015, so we had this conversation. We asked him whether, have you seen these things before? So he's like, our village is located here since 100 years, and I am here past like 60 years, but I haven't noticed them until you have told me that they are petroglyphs, which is quite surprising as well. So
But
they
you know
are,
what?
equal.
It's almost like, when people in Delhi, they live and they've not seen the Yamuna River. It's almost like that. Oh, it's right here.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like just behind his house, and how come he had never seen that petroglyph? It surprised us as well.
We
Like
take
one
things
of
for
my
granted.
thoughts for this is because we have this other view of or the understanding of what it means. So even if they would have seen it on a daily basis, they would not have imagined it to be of a specific significance. So we cannot say that they haven't seen it or noticed it at any point of time, but it must have been
Hmm.
so common for them to observe on a daily basis
It's a
that
part
it's
And
of
maybe
their,
possible
they
they think.
yeah, they thought that someone from amongst us has drawn these kind of figures. It is also
So
a
yeah, we
maybe
possibility.
it's a
Like
cannot take
part
away
of
Spiti is
their
also.
daily
Yeah.
life that, they didn't put much thought into it, like, Suramya mentioned. And
Yeah.
anyway, at least it's so important. That's why it's so important to have the community involved, so they are aware of the significance of their heritage, and things like destruction doesn't take place. So this is why community archaeology is so important. And with that,
I agree with you.
I'll take Grace's question. Grace, oh, sorry, Grace, before you, Kesang had her hand raised. So Kesang, your question, please. And then I'll take Grace.
Thank you for your fascinating presentation, Ekta. I have two questions. The first one is very basic, owing to the very little knowledge I have about archaeology. So I was wondering, in case of artifacts like pottery, say once they have been discovered and dated by archaeologists, where do they reach? Are they kind of brought back to the site, or do they become, say, part of institutions, or are they kind of museumized in a sense, or say they are hosted by the Archaeological Survey of India? So I wanted to know what happens to the artifacts like pottery. And the other question was, that whether there is a pattern to distinguish the sites that are along the river and from those that are, say, on the high ground, on the plateau. So these are the two questions that I have.
Okay. So your first question about the ceramics. So usually when we do all the analysis, they are housed in the museum of the institutions. And some, like from these pottery that we have found in Spiti Valley, some of them are housed at Himachal State Museum. So whenever next you visit to Shimla and go to Himachal State Museum, so you can easily locate these pottery remains in that section of Spiti section. And few of them are housed at Himalayan Museum at in my university, and that is SMB Garhwal University. So they are put in the museum usually, the intact pottery.
Okay.
And your next question is, sorry, can you repeat that?
If there's a pattern to kind of distinguish the sites that are along the river from those that are on the high ground, on the plateau?
As such, there is, I'm not sure about the pattern, because the most of the petroglyph sites are found on open air, open air sites, found along with the riverbank. And while the pictograph sites, that is the paintings, are found in Upper Spiti Valley in the caves and at high elevated areas only. But there are two, I remember two pictograph sites in the Lower Spiti Valley, and those shelters are are located like in the vicinity of the open air sites only. So it's like maybe they have chosen, like they found a shelter and they have chosen to paint it like that. So not particularly as a pattern, but just as a matter of cave, I guess, or a shelter.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So over to Grace with the second question, and then we will have Shamsher Thakur.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to say that your talk was absolutely amazing this morning. My question for you was, have you done any spatial analysis of these rock art sites to see if you expected to find them in certain areas, but that you didn't find them in? And did you find boulders that you would have expected rock art to appear on, but didn't? And if you did you interpret those findings at all?
Sorry, I didn't get your second question, but let me first answer your first question about the patterning. So as in the presentation, you have seen that I have marked 3 sections in the area, that is A, B, C. So I have done them according to the satellite image. First I have marked them in the GPS, and then done a satellite imaging of that. And according to that only, I have to study it conveniently, divided into 3 zones. And which also tells about that the major concentration of pictographs and petroglyphs in these areas. And sorry, what was the second question?
My second question was, if you, while you were doing your surveying, if you found boulders that you would have expected rock art to be on, but didn't find any rock art on those boulders, did you interpret those results?
No, I have. Yeah, there were many actually boulders which I was like excited that there might be a petroglyph on it, but eventually there were none. And but yeah, we can further we can study that as well. I haven't done yet in my research.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Grace. And yeah, so Shamsher Thakur has a question. He's not here. So we'll just, I think the connection in Kullu is kind of wavering.
Yeah.
Oh, he's there now. So yeah, over to you. Okay, we've lost him again. Until he comes back, let's have Parth with his question.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the burials. I mean, it's not my expertise, but I'm just curious. Ekta, do you think the burials are
Good evening.
less in number? Do you think the burials are less in number because only the elite were getting buried, or special people with special status? Or do you think that other graves and burial have not survived, have not been preserved properly?
I think they are not preserved because there are, like, in almost in every village we have burials have been reported in the past. Though we don't have the remains because, as I've said before, they are not considered auspicious and people usually throw them out. But almost in every village we have these remains, the burial remains. And when you said about elite class, I'm not sure about these, like, these burials are very elite because uh, at least from Spiti, not much of precious material has been recovered. Like in Kinnaur, we have steatite beads and other kind of precious material have been recovered, like copper bangles and all these things. But in Spiti, these burials doesn't have that kind of thing. So I'm not very sure about them being elite or not. And but it's more of about preservation, I guess. We haven't discovered more sites. I think in future there is a possibility that we might find more these burial sites, and then maybe we could have a better conclusion for these things.
So what is the maximum number of burials you have found at one location?
Tashikang is the only burial from where two skeletons have been found, though they are very much jumbled up. But that is the only site which we have. And plus Langza, yes, Langza is an important site from where 4 or 5 burials have been reported. Though only single bone have been discovered. But during the road construction, one of the localite has informed us that there were many sites which from where human bones just popped up, and there were pottery remains, and there were wooden material, planks, kind of a shaft were there. So I think Langza and Tashing, and interestingly, Langza and Tashing both are at same height. There is this only one nala between them. Otherwise, they are at same height, and which is like 4,500 meters, and they have yielded the maximum these burials in this area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ekta, Shamsher Thakur, he was getting problems with the internet. So he's asked me his question. He asks whether the sites are being preserved by the Himachal government or the Archaeological Survey of India or the locals. So the preponderance of, who is really looking after these sites?
Usually, when we take the material from these sites, then we cover them again with the the mud and all, so that people don't again disturb them. And we collect this material, and now they are housed at different museums. One in Himachal State Museum, and other is this HNV Garhwal University Museum. So
What
they are
about the
all these
petroglyphs?
materials.
What about the
Petroglyphs are
petroglyphs?
lying. They are lying there only because they are huge boulders.
No,
Of
no, but
course,
who's
we cannot.
protecting them? The question is who's
Uh,
protecting these sites?
uh, uh, Usually, the ADM of the area. He is looking after these. Plus, localites are also now aware of these, petroglyph sites. So they are also take them into consideration.
So there are no
But
boards on
I remember.
display by the ASI or anything?
No, not yet, not yet. There was this planning to make a rock art sanctuary in that area, but I don't think so. It has been implemented yet. Plus, there is also they have planned a rock art museum. And recently, I had a conversation with Nobu sir back in PT, and I've asked him what happened to that museum. So it's like it's not been opened yet, and because of the funding and all these things, and because IJNCA is also involved in this program to make this rock art museum in that area, but because of the lack of fundings and all this, so it has been implemented yet. Though there is a building and there are few boulders are also collected to dishonor for display, but not much has happened after that.
Talking about boulders, when I was in Ladakh in 2017, there was a big JCB destroying a boulder with the petroglyph right in front of my eyes, and I was aghast. It was like my heart was bleeding, but anyway, nobody could sense
The
that.
same is happening because they are localites also who don't consider these things much value of value.
Yeah,
And
because it's land
they are
development
using these
mafias.
boulders for they are using these boulders to make their houses and using for further construction. They are people, and we had fight also. There are a couple of incidents where we are trying them to convince to not to destroy them, but they're like, no, we have to use them. And we had this, conversation that we'll call the police, please don't do it. And very hot arguments actually.
Yeah.
But after we leave, we don't know now what is happening. Because when we came back, there were no more.
Yeah.
So,
and the next question.
These are things like very common.
And the next question, Shamsher Thakur, was the pottery polished? And if it was polished, what can you say about it?
It's most of the potteries are handmade, and
it can still be polished. It can be burnished for a polish. So, is there any kind of, shine on it?
No, they are very like crude in nature. I mean, they're not polished. They are cord marked, and a very coarse material is there.
Okay, so they're very coarse.
But one or two pottery I remember they are little polished, but maximum of them are in crude in nature.
Crude in nature. Okay.
Yeah.
So Ramya, let's take the last question for today.
Right. I just talking of human burials, I just kept coming back to me, Ekta. Through your university guidelines, as well as say ASI or the directorate of the state, what are the guidelines regarding ethical access to human remains in that context? So, did you have to, what kind of clearances did you have to take in order to get them scientifically analyzed or accessing or retrieving them from their site locations?
Like in my case, we had permission from ASI, and then we took permission from localites as well to whether we can take them with us. So we have even asked the ADM of the area, like we have informed him as well. And then for dating and scientific analysis, we took ethical clearance from our university. There is this committee for the ethical clearance, and then we took a letter from them as well. And then we are able to send these material to for like scientific analysis. And then these materials, because they are damaged as well in the process of scientific analysis, we have to crush them and all that. So they just took a chunk of it, and then all the materials again was sent back to the museum itself. And then we
so where is it currently housed? Where are all
it's
the
in Garhwal University and State Museum Himachal. They are divided into these two.
Where in Himachal Pradesh?
State Museum Himachal Pradesh, Shimla.
Shimla. Okay.
State Museum.
Great.
Yeah.
The second one was regarding, say, adaptive reuse of the boulders in the communities that you have been speaking in. So have you found any possibilities where, say, in the construction of houses or other, architectural elements, have you seen any, or did you chance observations of
Yes, yes,
petroglyphs
yes,
on
yes.
any of them?
There is one wall. I've even photographed it, and there is this paper on contesting antiquity, where we have. I've also published that photograph, particularly on the destruction of these petroglyphs. Like there is this wall, and in the last boulder has petroglyphs on it, and they have made a wall, around that. They have used that boulder to make that wall. So they are
Absolutely.
incidents, these kind of, not in houses, but yeah, seen in the wall.
Okay. And
And
and my last,
yeah, and
go
vandalism
ahead.
is there. I mean, like people are still, painting them, and all these kind of things are still happening.
So like on a more philosophical line, where would you actually think of it to stop being vandalism and being usage by the local communities? Like
Uh,
because they're using it for their
uh-huh.
daily purposes, but on one side it becomes an act of vandalism. So where do we draw a line in that sense?
Uh, we had, I remember a conversation I had with Handa sir, where he said, like in India, we cannot, preserve everything, because India is so archaeologically rich that we cannot stop people from using the spaces. So maybe we can choose a middle path, in which uh, we preserve these petroglyphs, as well as if some are used for the construction purpose as well. But for the we for them, like, we have to make sure that we document all these, at least we can document all these petroglyphs beforehand, and then forming this museum, which houses this, like these boulders. So yeah, I mean, middle path seems to be you know
Like
an
in,
option
it,
Absolutely.
it
for
brings
that.
to mind in Peru, for example, the Cyclopean walls. They form part of, because people live with these places, generations on. They've made these walls as backdrops of their cafes and stuff. I'm not suggesting build cafes around these petroglyphs, but I am saying that awareness is very, very important. And that's the purpose of documentation, like what Ekta is doing. All of us present here today have been more enlightened. And, when we talk and we spread the word, and people who are from Spiti are also on this forum today. So awareness is very important. Preservation of our cultural heritage. Opening of the Atal Tunnel has a lot of consequences. One of them is development, wanton destruction of sites through these development mafias. And we have to be very conscious of the fact that as archaeologists, our work does not stop at just documentation, but bringing the community together to have this awareness that if this destroys their roots, their identity gets destroyed. So it's very important to preserve this in the right way. So of course there's a middle path, but the middle path has to be right also.
Yes,
So
yes, I agree with you.
yeah.
Yes, you're right.
So with that, we'll sign off today. And Ekta, thank you so much. We are so proud of you and that you are a part of our institute. And so much of work has been, done, and so much work is waiting to be done. And next year, when Spiti opens, we will have a historical archaeology field school at Key Monastery. So those of you who intend doing that with us, Ekta, I, and of course, Dr. Parth will be the instructors for that field school. Date to be announced, of course, subject to COVID, because we do not want COVID to come into those very, very, these areas, and it's really endangering their lives as well. So that's for next year. Those of you who are new to the forum, we are having a virtual workshop. It's a very intensive workshop, 7 days, 4 hours each day, on Hindu and Buddhist motifs and iconography in the Western Himalayas. If you wish to sign up, please send us an email at sonaliga@ucla.edu, or check our Facebook page, Instagram handle, a few previous posts. We would love to give you information on that. A lot have registered, and it's still open for those of you who want to join in. And those of you who are not archaeologists or anthropologists or art historians who just love the Himalayas and go to these places on treks, on hikes, and to fulfill your passion of traveling, it's very important that the photographs you take, they have meaning, and you document things that you are seeing for the first time. You talk to the locals, and like villages like Kibber and all, which have these sites, fossil sites. Don't bring those things back with you. Bring back memories, bring back photographs, but leave fossils, leave stones, leave these artifacts which are a part of that landscape, of that history. Leave them there. Do not destroy these places. And if you have information of something that has come up in the village, please inform us. Inform the Archaeological Survey of India, inform institutes like ours, so that we can try to do justice to that. We can, context is very important. Context is lost, everything is lost. So on that note, I thank you everyone who's present here. And before we go, Ekta, I would like you to say some parting words of wisdom, as is our tradition. And also next week, we won't be having a talk. We will have a talk the week after that. So take a break, relax, and then we meet in December with more vigor and enthusiasm, and more a lineup of talks from the Himalayas, in the Himalayas, So, okay, Ekta, your words of wisdom, and then we'll call it a day.
Okay. Words of wisdom. Like in the context of archaeology only, I think
in the context of Spiti, yeah.
Yes, I think I kind of suggest people to be a little sensitive towards people around and the place around. And I think one of the most common problem we face in not just in Spiti but in Himalayan region is the trash in the area that people, tourists, and even the local lights are involved in this. They go and fill these areas with trash. So I think we could just that we say, and collect all the trash with us and take back that to home instead of leaving that behind. So,
okay.
And keep the Spiti clean and Himalayas clean.
Great. And so with that, leave your thoughts, carry back memories, carry back trash. Very important. Carry your trash back. Don't carry a bit of the Himalayas physically, but in your minds. And hope this COVID situation comes in control. Those of you who are in the Himalayas, just preserve it. And those of you who love the Himalayas, keep on loving it, because that's what it requires. And that's what we are here for, to preserve our heritage. Thank you so much, and we will meet the week after next. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.